What's the meaning of life? I thought we'd pick a nice easy topic today. So most of what I'm going to talk about comes from the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. So a lot of these ideas are not my own. I wouldn't have come up with these, but they make a lot of sense in terms of how to find purpose and meaning in your life. So it's one of them unanswerable questions that seems so elusive and difficult to tackle, when in reality, like with my video about what Eckhart Tolle talks about in terms of spirituality, a lot of times it's not that deep. You can come to sort of conclusions with it. So that was what I've come to find with purpose and meaning in life. What is the meaning of life? Now, the meaning that I've come to finding life has come mainly from two sources. Obviously, your life experience determines that, but it's Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl and Stefan Aarnio's books, Hard Times Create Strong Men and Dead Man Walking. They've all influenced how I see purpose and meaning in life. So the first thing is, really, if you're going to have a good life, so I've mentioned before that there are four aspects, in my opinion, to a good life: belief, health, wealth, and relationships. If you don't know what you believe or what a good life is to you, belief is the lens through which you see the world. So you first have to know what is the meaning of life. You have to answer that question in order to have a good life, because if you don't know what the meaning is, then you don't know where to go from there. So step one, so the first thing to learn is know your purpose, have goals. If you're not goal driven and you don't know what purpose you have in life, you're just a feather in the wind and anything will suffice. You know, if you don't know what your goal is, you don't know whether you've made it, sort of thing. So the first thing is to have goals. And why do you need a purpose or a meaning in life? And Viktor Frankl says a purpose will protect you against suffering. So it buffers you against the suffering of life. If life was plain sailing, you could just sort of go through life not needing a purpose or a why. But when life is hard, if you know what your purpose is, you can say, well, life's hard, but I'm on this mission, I've got this purpose. So it's a protection against the suffering of life. Now, life isn't always suffering, there is good in life, but when it is hard, this is what will get you through. And a quote he mentions in the book, this is a Friedrich Nietzsche quote: "He who has a why can bear almost any how." So life can be extremely difficult, but if you know why you're doing it, you will always do it. It's like having children. If you have children, there's almost nothing you won't do to protect your children. Now you know your why. I've got to protect my kids, so I'm willing to do whatever it takes. So in terms of the purpose in life, Frankl says there are three purposes, right? And it's going to be one of these three. And I wouldn't have thought, it was such an elusive question that I would never have come up with this. But when you distill it down to these three things, you think, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All I want out of life, the purpose of my life, can be a variation of one of these three things. So the three purposes of life are to create a work or do a deed. Right, now you might be an artist and you want to create the perfect piece of art. You might have a book in you and your job is to write the book. Viktor Frankl was I'm not going to tell you too much about the book because you should just read it, it's a great book. But he was a Holocaust survivor who had the desire, one of his purposes was to write a book, and he wrote like a manuscript for the book. And then the prison guards took it off him and he had to rewrite it. So that was like his purpose, to get this book out. So you might have a book in you. You might want to do some sort of charitable deed. So it's create a work or do a deed. You might have a film in you. A friend of mine's writing a script for a movie. You just got to get that, like you want to get that done before you die. That's your mission, that's your purpose, is to create a work. You've got to make that piece of art. I used to, in my mind, I've always been into photography, and I would see pictures in my mind and I'd be like, it would keep me up at night. I'm like, I need to get that picture. I can see it. It's a sunset with this and that, and I've just got to make that happen. So that's creating a work. And other times I really like music. I would listen to music and I'd be like, I could make a music video for that, and that would be creating a work. And I would often listen to a song, create the music video in my mind, and then see afterwards the music video that actually goes with the song, and I would think my music video is better. The only time that wasn't the case was Ed Sheeran's song Thinking Out Loud. The music video for that song, in my opinion, is amazing. It was shot on film as well, and you can tell in the graininess on the film. Beautiful, really good music video. And to me, I was like, yeah, whatever I come up with in my head wouldn't have looked as good as that, so they got it bang on. So artists create music, create pieces of work. So you could be, your purpose could be create a work or do a deed. So doing a deed could be, before I die, I would really like to build a well in some town in Africa that doesn't have clean water. Once I've done that, I'll be fulfilled. And the more wells I can build, the better. So it doesn't have to be charitable. It could be like well, I can't really think of an example, but yeah, it's going to be create a work or do a deed. Purpose number 2 can be experience something or encounter someone, right? Now, most people, this is going to be your purpose. So this is where bucket lists come in. People that are like terminally ill, they write a bucket list. And what is that? That's experiencing something. I want to see Niagara Falls. I want to climb Mount Snowdon, or whatever it is. I've got to experience something or encounter someone. And most people, this is their purpose, because it's find a partner and a wife. So that is experiencing something, experiencing love, by encountering someone, which is a wife or a partner, or it could be a friend, or so that is, and that makes perfect sense. That's kind of the whole point, as far as I can tell. Experience something or encounter someone. And another motivation is have children, and that's experiencing something and encountering someone. You want to encounter your children and experience being a parent. So to me, that seems a very obvious purpose of life. And once you know that, there's like, it's not an unanswerable question. What's the purpose? Well, I want to write a book. That's to create a work. I want to build a well in Africa, just to, so I've done something. Or I want to, you know, some sort of charitable act. That's probably going to be experience of something. I've always wanted to go to New Zealand. I've always wanted to swim with dolphins, experience something, encounter someone. Could be a friend, could be a wife or a partner, or even somebody. I mean, fame's a bit of a sketchy one, but it could be like, I mean, there's not many people. It could be like a religious figure, or go to a certain, like I went to a monastery in Scotland, and I think churches and monasteries, I would like to visit more of those. That would be something, because I've never really been that into travel. I think I live in a beautiful part of the world, and I'm grateful for where I live. So I don't really need to go to the other side of the planet just to go, oh, this is cool. I can go down the road and I think it's nice, do you know what I mean? But for me, it would be some sort of a, like, cathedral, or just architecture in general is quite interesting to me. Encounter someone. Again, we've talked about that. And then the third purpose in life is the attitude you take to unavoidable suffering. Now, this wouldn't have occurred to me, because this is something you don't really want to have to address. But the first two are purpose. What can I get out of life? And the third one is the attitude you take to unavoidable suffering is something you have choice over. It's a purpose you can choose. So say you get cancer and it's extremely difficult to deal with. Now, you can be that miserable cancer person, or there's people that are just as joyous as somebody that hasn't got cancer, and you think, oh, how do they manage that? And it's because it's their purpose. I've got cancer, but my purpose is to take a good attitude to this unavoidable suffering. So that one might take a bit of meditation and a bit of pondering on, but that one really didn't occur to me, and I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because you do have a choice. Your purpose now, you might know that you're terminal, and I don't really believe in, I think you can always explore options. I read in another book, this was a health book, when there's life, there's hope. So all the time you're alive, you're not dying of cancer. I mean, easy for me to say I don't have cancer, but I think all the time you're alive, you've always got hope. So that's the three purposes. So that your purpose in life is going to be, probably, if you believe what Viktor Frankl's saying, one of those three things. And I think all purposes can come down to one of those three things. So he says, accept what is stoically. Because if you're, like, he was a Auschwitz prisoner of war, essentially. And you could think, well, it wasn't easy for him to say that. Do you know what I mean? He was in like one of the worst situations you could possibly be in, and he's saying, well, you got to accept it, because if you tell yourself stories like it's not fair and I shouldn't be here, that's just going to send you mad. You have to look at reality, or I shouldn't have cancer, I shouldn't be in this unavoidable suffering. You've got to look at it for what it is. Well, this is reality. No amount of me saying this shouldn't be the case is going to change it. Another point in the book is always have a sense of humour. And this is one. I think humour is a superpower, and it's something I'm relearning. When I was younger, I was always very funny and had a good sense of humour. And the suffering of life, the pain of life, kind of beat that out of me a bit. And it went, the humour went, and I had to look at life in quite a hard way. And then now I'm like, no, humour is a superpower that's going to get you through. And throughout the book, he'll be in like situations that are absolutely horrendous. And you think, he's not cracking jokes in the way that maybe I would. My sense of humour is different, but he would just look at things and see the funny side. Even though he's an inmate in like the worst living conditions possible, and he still sees humour in that. Just in his situation, he's like, it's just, well, you'll have to read the book to see how he kind of goes about that, but so yeah, sense of humour. No matter, because sometimes you feel like you have to have like a grim expression on your face, oh, this is bad, and you could, I've done this, I'm like conflicted, I'll be like, this is terrible, but I kind of want to crack a joke about it. But no, it's bad. I've got cancer. I should, be miserable about it. But who says? Who says you should? Maybe you should be serious, but maybe not. You can have a laugh about anything. And I've found this. Some of my hardest things that I've dealt with have been like quite serious. I cut my hand with a chainsaw. Very serious injury. And I wasn't serious about it. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't like, oh, what if I lose? Like when I cut my hand with a chainsaw, they had to do surgery to reconnect some of the tendons in my little finger. And it looked like I was going to lose my little finger. And the doctor comes round, and before the surgery, because they kind of like rushed it through because it was quite urgent, the doctor said, oh, I just need you to sign this form, because we're putting you under general anaesthetic, so you won't be able to consent to certain things once you're under. So we just need you to tick off things that you allow us to do, so that you don't wake up and we've done something that you're unhappy with. And it was like, the first thing we're going to try and do is repair your little finger. If we can't do that, we might have to remove your little finger. Then we might have to remove the finger next to it. And the list just like went on, and it was like, yeah, all of the fingers on your left hand, and then your left hand up to your wrist. Like, and there's just a list. It's like, do you consent to us doing all of those? Because if I didn't, they would have to stop the procedure, wake me up, and then ask me whether that was like something I was happy with. And I just found that funny. Like, that's quite serious. Most people would be like, don't laugh about that. But I just thought, I could have a hook hand. Do you know what I mean? I could literally have no left hand when I wake up, and this is mad. But I found it funny, and I still like joke about that. And I genuinely think I probably would have been alright if they did take the little finger off or the whole hand off. And it was very unlikely because it was just my little finger that had well, it was the two smallest fingers on my left hand sustained the injury. But there is a chance I could have woke up with no hand. But in that moment, I wasn't like, oh, I can't sign that, you're making me sign away my left hand, I'm 26 or whatever I was. Oh, this is terrible. I just thought it was funny. And that seems a bit like, what's it called? Like, you're not being very, no, it's gone. You're being I really haven't got it. You should be more, it's important, you should focus, nah, don't worry about it, you get the point. Anyway, use humour when life is hard, and the harder life is and the worse the situation is, the more humour is relevant. And don't feel guilty about having a sense of humour. You don't have to be serious. I almost cut my left hand off. I can joke about it. I don't have to be serious. You don't have to, right? I think I made that point. So, always have a sense of humour. Have something to die for and have values. So most people don't know what their values are. So when life hands them a situation where they might have to be in a life or death situation, they don't know what they're living for, so they don't know what they're dying for. Whereas Viktor Frankl was like, I know what my purpose is. And when you know your purpose and your goals and your mission, death doesn't really become a problem anymore, because you say to yourself, this is my purpose. I want to find a wife and have children and raise a strong family. Either that's going to happen or I'm going to die. Whichever comes first, I'd like that to happen rather than me dying first. But once you know what you're living for, every day that you're working towards that, death's irrelevant. It will come. Hopefully it comes after you fulfill your purpose. But if it comes before, it doesn't really matter, because you're focusing, you know what your purpose is. You've got something to die for. At least if I die, I'm dying closer to that purpose. So know what your values are, know what your purpose is, and then know when you're faced with, and then so say you do have your family and you're threatened, you know, I'm willing to die for this family, or I'm willing to die to, some people would have been like doing a deed. So say, you know, women's rights. When women had less rights, a woman might have written a book and couldn't get it published. And she's like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be the first woman that gets a book like this published. And she's willing to die for it. So, you choose the meaning and purpose in your life. So the question is, what is the meaning of life? That was the first question we started with. And it seemed like we're trying to uncover some sort of a truth. What is the meaning of life? Like, there's some universal meaning of life. And that you can't answer because nobody knows. But you choose it. So you choose, it's one of those three things, isn't it? Create a work, do a deed. Or experience something or encounter someone. Or the attitude you take to unavoidable suffering. That's something I choose. I don't have to meditate and get some sort of enlightened answer. But a lot of people don't choose. They just go through life. I work my job, I have kids. And they do kind of what, I try and visit these places. They do these things. But I think you can be more conscious of it, and you can have a belief about what my purpose is. So the actionable step is, think about what I've said in this video and choose the meaning and purpose. What is it? What do you want to create? What do you want to do? Who do you want to encounter? What do you want to see? And if you are in a situation where you have suffering in your life, who do you want to be? How do you want to deal with that? Right, then the next point is, don't try and control everything. Trust the Tao, or the way of the universe. So I've put those words, the Tao and the universe. But you never quite know how a shitty situation is going to turn out. So there's this story. I don't know whether this is, like, where this is from. This has kind of been passed around quite a bit, and I'm going to completely destroy the story. You probably want to find an original version of this, but there was a farmer, right, who had a horse, and his horse is in the pen and it's doing its thing, and then the horse runs away, and then all of the villagers come round and go, that's really bad because your horse has run away and now you're not going to be able to plough your field as good. And the farmer goes, maybe. Then a couple of weeks later, the horse comes back, but it brings with it 3 more wild horses. So now the farmer's got 3 extra horses, so he pens them up and starts breaking them in. And all the villagers come round and go, oh, you're so lucky. Your horse ran away, but now you've got 3 horses for free. That would have cost you a fortune. You can plough all the fields. Like, this is amazing. And he just answers with, maybe. So anyway, the next day, his son is breaking in one of the horses, and he falls off and breaks his leg. And that's bad because his son was a worker on the farm and he can't plough the fields as good. And then all the villagers come round and say, oh, your son's broke his leg, that's terrible. And the farmer just says, maybe. Then the next day, the conscription officer comes round and is trying to conscribe men to go to war, some local war that's happening. And his son could have gone off and got killed in this war. But his son couldn't go because he's got a broken leg and he's no use as a soldier. And all the villagers come round and say, oh, my son had to go to war and yours didn't. You're so lucky. And the farmer goes, maybe. So the farmer has got the stoic mindset of, I don't know how this is going to turn out. A minute ago he had a broken leg and it was terrible. Now the broken leg is the best thing because he doesn't have to go to war, right? So I completely destroyed that story. There's a better version, but that's the general gist of it. You can't predict the future. You don't know how your current shitty situation might turn out to be the best thing that's happened to you. And in the book, Viktor Frankl describes a situation where they try and escape and then choose not to. It's been a while since I've read the book, so check the book out. But the escape attempt might not have been, you don't know how it's going to work out in the end. So you can't predict the future. So trust. There were some bits in the book where he should have, if he'd have made a different decision that looked like the better decision, he would have ended up going to his death. Even just in the line, it was like a left or right decision. Left would have got him to a gas chamber, right would have got him the path he went, and he survived. And all the time, it was a 50-50. He never would have known which path to take. And the universe, or the Tao, just so happened that he ended up alright. So you're never going to know. And you can't, a lot of people went left and went to their demise. So just trust it. You got to trust it, because not trusting it, you're still going to end up 50-50. So, don't control everything, trust the universe. Suffer your fate well. So he says, suffer your fate well. So this is the attitude you take to unavoidable suffering. In a crisis, right? Who do you want to be? Say you're on the Titanic and you know we're all going to die, we're going down with the ship. Do you want to be in the presence of somebody running around panicking, going, oh, why me, crying his eyes out? Or do you want to be in the presence of somebody who's calm and cracking jokes? Do you know what I mean? Who do you want to be, that guy? Who do you want to be in a crisis? I would rather be the guy that's calm and at least going out having a laugh. I don't want to be panicking and stressing people out. And you can choose that in your life. When things aren't going wrong, my brother's like this. He's so chilled. He could crash his car. He could buy a brand new car, crash it. I know this is a superficial analogy, but it's just an easy one to go for. Even like the hand thing. He would probably laugh if he lost a hand or something like that. He's just so chilled that he's who you want to be around in a crisis. When shit's hitting the fan, he ain't panicking. We're having a laugh about it. And that's, again, that comes back to humour. So this is another one. This again is what attitude you take to suffering. But again, I never would have thought of this. I guess we're all quite selfish, and I am definitely selfish. But we often ask, what do I expect from life? So my purpose is, what can I get? Who can I meet? Who can I see? What can I experience? What can I get out of life? But sometimes the question is, what does life expect of me? And this is often for other people. So I had a period where I was extremely depressed, and I realised depression is very selfish, because I was like, all this time I'm focused on me, I'm sad. Why don't I feel good? And then I thought, if I wasn't here anymore, if I chose a certain way of dealing with this and wasn't here, then I'm imparting all of that pain on the people I love, my brother, my family, my parents, my close friends. And I thought, well, the thing that got me through that was, it doesn't matter how you feel. You couldn't do that to them. So how you deal with this suffering is your purpose. You got to get through this for the sake of them, because you couldn't put them through the pain of losing someone. It's not fair. So I asked, what does life expect of me? I'm not... When you're depressed, it's very hopeless and you don't see a way out, and it's like forever, this is just going to be terrible. And in my experience, it isn't. It does get better. So anybody else out there dealing with depression, if you take this approach, what does life expect of me? Well, it just expects me to do another day for my family and friends, and then do a day after that, and just keep going. And it might never get better. That was actually the thing that sorted depression out for me. I was like, I feel like shit, and I don't anticipate feeling any better at any time in the future. But this is no longer about what I can get out of life, which is feeling good. It's about what life expects of me, which is you've just got to keep going for your friends and family. So what does life expect of you? You might be in a very hard situation. Again, I'm talking in terms of like quite depressing, hard, life being hard. But I think we do live in hard times at the moment. But your life might be good, so this might not apply to you. So I'm a very optimistic, happy person, so I don't want this to sound like purpose is just grind and life's hard, but you do it anyway. That's not what I'm about. I think life is beautiful and you can create good works, do good deeds, experience beautiful places and experiences and people. But if life is handing you suffering, that does become your purpose. So, and you've got to live up to it. What does life expect of me? And am I living up to it? So when I was depressed, I was like being selfish and, oh, what can I get? How can I fix myself? But I wasn't living up to, well, hang on a minute, how are you treating other people? And are you causing depression in them? Because if you're depressed, one person being depressed is better than 5 people being depressed. That's the conclusion I came to anyway. So what is life expecting of you, and are you living up to it? And then the last thing is meditate on your own mortality, die before you die. And then a Marcus Aurelius kind of thing is, it doesn't matter, you're going to die, and everyone you remember, everyone you know is going to die at some point, and it's all going to be forgotten. So these stories of, oh, I've got to get this, I've got to get that, it's not that important, but you can't become nihilistic. It almost frees you up. So once you go, oh, I'm going to die one day, I better get on with this. I'm going to die one day and not be able to write that book or see the Niagara Falls. So it gives you, it almost motivates you. Once you go, oh, I'm soon enough, like within 50 years, I'll be dead. I'll be just, dust in the ground, dust, like ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I better get on with this. Time is of the essence. And I had to have a chat with like a couple of my mates. He was, Shane in particular, he was like, oh, I'm writing this script. I was like, mate, get it done. Like, we're 30 now. I know that's not old, but I'm like, within a blink, 10 years goes by in a blink of an eye. If you don't choose what your purpose is and what the meaning of your life is, you'll be dead soon and it won't matter. So get on with it, essentially. But that's a choice, you choose it. And then the final thing, this is Stefano. I'll make a separate video on this because I think it's very important, and it might be a bit controversial. It shouldn't be. It's just kind of a what's the word? What's the opposite of liberal? If you're liberal, begins with C. I can't remember. But it's just how it used to be. Stefano says a man's purpose is his work and a woman's purpose is her family. And I believe that to the T. I believe it's not that deep. There's not much more to go into than that, at least for me. So a man's purpose is his work. What work does he provide? What value does he provide to the world? And in doing that, he will get a certain reward which allows him to provide for his family, and a woman obviously has life-giving capacity is to have children and have a family. Now, the woke side of things would probably disagree, but it is what it is. We'll talk about that in future videos. So anyway, that's the meaning of life. My actionable step is deep journal on this. So you want to ask yourself the question, what is the meaning of life according to me? What is my purpose here on earth? Is it to create a work or do a deed? Is it to experience something or encounter someone? And if so, what do I want to experience and who do I want to encounter? Or is it the attitude I take to unavoidable suffering? And you'll know if it's that because you will have unavoidable suffering in your life. That one kind of isn't a choice. That one is decided for you. And then you'll say, who do I want to be in the face of this suffering? And a sense of humour and joy and lightheartedness is usually the best place to start. So, yeah, he who has a why can bear almost any how. That's what's going to get you through the suffering. So yeah, I reckon that should... We'll talk more about this anyway because it's quite important, but that is belief. So, hope you boys are having a good day. Boys and girls. I've got some women that watch the channel. Have a good day. See you on the next one.